No spoilers for the show in this video, but there will be spoilers for the first 3 Terminator movies. Welcome to Review Sarah Connor Chronicles show Terminator. Originally I was going to... the reason I say the words in those orders, I'm trying to make sure that if you're seeing the link for this in like a thumbnail on YouTube, the first couple of words hopefully tell you what this is a video of. So, I don't know how many hours this is going to end up, but if it's a long video, which is it's probably going to end up a long video, a lot of people aren't going to click it unless they're fairly certain it's something they're interested in. But yes, I will not be spoiling the show in this. I guess an argument could be made that I should take down the spoiler tag. But then again, not everyone has watched the first 3 movies, so I think I'm going to leave it there, at least for now. Yes, contains spoilers for earlier entries in this franchise, namely the first 3 movies. This is a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. And I've done other videos on the subject. The links will be in the description, or rather, the link to the playlist of them. And since I've made other videos on this, I'm going to try not to restate what I said there. I am really going to miss this show, and I know I said that in the Season 2 Thoughts video, and I probably said it off camera nearly 10 years ago when the first time I finished watching Season 2 and knew there wasn't a Season 3 on the way. Now, let's see. Got some... Yeah. Before I get into it, this is going to be brief, completely off topic, and I may have said this before, but now having just rewatched the M. Night Shyamalan movie Split, I do feel I need to say again, there definitely needs to be, if there isn't already, a Split mod for Amnesia and or Outlast. It's simply, it is something that needs to... There's some chance that, I don't know if M. Night Shyamalan himself, or maybe the DP or someone, played those games and were like, I would like to make the movie adaptation, because it really, like, and you could be chased by the alters, and it's like the different ones move at different speeds, and yeah, I don't want to spoil. You can probably figure out if you've watched the movie and you've played at least one of those games, you know that there are consequences to being caught by at least one individual in each of them. So yeah. Now, back to business. My own film critic rating for this is 8 out of 10, and my personal rating is also 8 out of 10. So, jumping into the first section. Plot. We start in the year 1999. John Connor is now 15 years old. He and Sarah have been hiding and running ever since they blew up Cyberdyne in 1995. 1997 passed without Judgment Day. Cromartie, a Terminator, travels back through time and targets John again. So Sarah and John, with the help of Cameron, a reprogrammed Terminator who looks like a teenage girl, time travel to the year 2007. Yes, all 3 of them use a single time machine, and they don't strip down before they do it, although they do arrive naked. If you can't get past that, you are not going to get very far into the show. There are some things where it does readjust continuity from the movies. I would say it tends to do so well, and it tends to... There's sometimes a really good reason for it, although I do think that they've just completely forgotten that the future war talked about in the movies, some of the defining things that are happening in the year 2029, not 2027. I think they just straight up forgot. Anyway, 2007. 4 years before the new Judgment Day. LA. Cameron said that's where to go to stop Skynet. And John, it's because I'm about to say point. John points out to Sarah, they already changed the future once in T2. Otherwise, Judgment Day would have been in 1997. They just didn't change it enough. She, at first, is reluctant. She feels like the safest thing is to go back into hiding. But Cameron also said they'd be safe there. However, there they do have to deal with other time travelers. And this is, of course, again, where, if there weren't any other time travelers in the show, you would feel like, there's something missing to make it Terminator. Some of the time travelers are Terminators. Not all of those are even on missions to kill. Some have humans working for them who may even think they're human too. Stopping them could prove vital to fighting Skynet. And some, perhaps only a few, of the time travelers are resistance fighters. Sarah, John, and Cameron will try to figure out what becomes Skynet and stop it. It can't be something at Cyberdyne, since that was destroyed. And, in Terminator 2, since that was a movie with less running time than the series, it was a matter of stopping Dyson and or destroying Cyberdyne. Now, since this is a series, not only are they not sure what will become, or at least aid Skynet, they do have leads, but some of the people who produced those leads died before they could give more details on them. They also aren't sure, it's what was that show? I never watched it, but I remember a trailer, like POI, person of interest, and they only know the identity. They don't know if it's a criminal, a victim, or a witness, or whatever. It's kind of like that. They'll have a name, or they'll have a location, and it's like, they say in one episode, what relation does this, have to Skynet? Friend or foe? And sometimes they also aren't sure which action will hurt Skynet more in the future. Let's see. And, sometimes they may not even be certain which course of action will hurt Skynet and which might help it. In part because some of the leads are so vague. Now, I need to get better at removing notes that I decide against reading out in the video. Here we go. I am really happy that this show did not just try to be one long chase. Obviously, it would be too much if this entire show was just non-stop chase. But this also showed that maybe a TV show was the way to get interesting with the franchise again. When this show went off the air, yeah. Sorry, I voice type these and I don't always proofread. Yeah. When the show first came on the air, we had 2 sequels to the first movie, and both of them just used the same core concept and chase structure as the first one. And the first of those sequels was made by James Cameron himself. Even he couldn't figure out another way to make a Terminator movie, and from the I guess there's only been the one trailer for Terminator 6. It looks like he still doesn't. He wrote the story for that one, and it's still, anyway. And then, after this was taken off the air, they made Terminator 4, which I haven't rewatched for some years now. I will watch in a few weeks, I forget the exact date, and do a separate video on what I think of that, and if I think that was a good way to try to do something different with the franchise. I do respect that they did at least figure. I think there's some chance that people would have been furious if they took this show off the air just to do another Terminator chase movie. That if they did absolutely nothing different after this show went and showed that you could do much more interesting, different ideas with, there are episodes of this show where, I guess I shouldn't give too much away. I'm just gonna say there are episodes of this show that really don't resemble the movies other than in like tone and style, but they're not like big action, and there are stories that don't have very much of like destructive robots at all. There are episodes, there's a lot of exploration of what is the difference between a man and a machine, and how would a machine seem more human, or could a machine ever be human? Things like that, which, you know, the movies don't have that much time to just to ask those questions. They do ask them, but they don't have the time to dive as deep into the asking as the show does. And I have to say, I really hope that they just, you know, Game of Thrones ended, so Lena Headey is you know, free. I realize it's been years, and I think the show creator, yeah, this show's show creator, Josh Friedman, said that the rights are a mess, which, you know, when is that not? That's the issue since day one from you know, with the Terminator franchise. But I would much rather see more seasons of this show than more movies. I really don't think there's much. You know what? Maybe I'll be surprised. The entire reason I'm doing this video, and every other video I've been recently doing, excuse me. Sorry about the bouncing of the camera. I just gotta. There we go. I swear, this computer always wants to reboot for purposes of updating. I'm pretty sure it's just not updating at all. But anyway, the entire reason I'm doing these videos on the Terminator is to have them all done by the time Terminator 6 comes out. Maybe that movie will blow my mind. The trailer sure hasn't, but maybe it will. Maybe the next trailer will. Anyway, I realize there's recently been a featurette trailer thing. I think that was like 2 or 3 days ago. I haven't even gotten around to watching that. I just don't think there's more to really do with the movies, but anyway. Apologies for the digression, and let me just, I'm not pretending to be an airplane, I'm just checking. Yeah, I am in fact still centered. So, moving on to the next section, which is called, time here, on plot. Now, there are tons of references to the first two movies, and they're handled much more smoothly and less awkwardly than the third and fourth movie. If you go into this show blind, the references won't come off as very staged and awkward, the way that some say they do in Terminator Genesis. If you go into that movie blind, when did I last watch that? A year ago? 2 years? I forget. I'm also going to be watching that again, but yeah. I'm watching them all in order. But yes, you can go in blind. The pilot brings you up to speed on the events of the first two movies with it almost feels like they just wrote like I've been watching some of those pitch meetings on the Screen Rant's channel, you know, where he'll sometimes say, and then in the script you just have pages that say, you know, rang around, you have pages that just say Goldblum. It feels like they just wrote, you know, sum up first two movies for audience members who haven't seen them. You know, it really very, very clearly, and there is basically a reason, but you can really tell it's not awkward, but you can tell that that's what it's there for. Yeah, I'm just gonna. It's an FBI agent who's been following the case for years, who explains it to someone that he figures might have some information that can help him. Now, and I have more. At least I marked it this time. I didn't use to mark the text that I was supposed to skip. Thank you. Italics? Italics? I don't know how to pronounce it. Being a TV show, of course, there are some ideas and storylines that are not developed, don't get a lot of time, or even dropped. This is especially true of season 1. It ended very suddenly and unexpectedly for the writers. It's not really true of season 2. Season 2 pays off everything that it sets up. though arguably some storylines get a little too much time devoted to them, and I speak about which in the Season 2 Thoughts video. I'm not going to give it away here. Let's see. But yeah, there are frustrations connected with watching both seasons, unfortunately, but I would say it's still very much worth it. But you can definitely tell that Season 1, they didn't, maybe not so much when watching Season 1, but when you start watching Season 2, you can tell, okay, they didn't expect Season 1 to end where it did and how it did. You know, they wrote that episode expecting to do more episodes before the season finale, but yeah. Writer's strike, it screwed over a lot of shows, unfortunately. And I forget, did the writers even get better terms? Did it even... Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Excuse me. And Season 2 ends on a very interesting cliffhanger, and they did believe that they would get to follow up on that. You know, it's not one of those where they knew that the show was ending, so they were just like, you know what, screw the fans, let's just... No. They legitimately thought that they would be able to. So, it's too bad they didn't. Maybe they will at some point, fingers crossed. Over the course of the show, we find that several Terminators have been sent back through time. They don't all have missions to kill. Some of them are, you know, one early example is one that's hiding steel that will be used to build Terminator skeletons. And, you know, John, Sarah, and Cameron discuss, is this, you know, is this something that we need to stop? Is it worth the risk? Kind of. Right from the start, this clearly understands, respects, and loves the first two movies far more than the third and fourth movie. You know, the third and fourth, it really feels like, I don't doubt that Jonathan Mostow and McG are fans of the first two movies. It seems like they are, and you know, I'm not gonna be that guy who says, you're not a fan, you're not a proper fan, whatever. It's just that not every fan is able to recreate, you know, not... Some fans are Quentin Tarantino and can go and pick things from 1,000 different movies and make something amazing, and some fans are Ang Lee and go and make 2003's Hulk, which there's clear love of the material, but it just doesn't understand how to make a good adaptation. And that's yeah. But yeah, there are some major retcons, and some of them I would call misguided. I guess... Yeah, I'm not gonna detail them. I do in the Season Thoughts videos. I'm not gonna give them away if you haven't watched. Incredible acting performances by basically everyone, including characters involved, including characters who only appear very briefly. Some real standout single episode guest stars, such as... Yeah, I'm just gonna name drop Barbara. You'll know when you see. I love every single episode, including both season openers and both season finales of the show. Every single episode, without fail, ranks as an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 for me. Overall, the show is an 8 out of 10, but there are definitely... Honestly, there are a couple that are a 10 out of 10. That's... yeah. Now... Right, and a big old section of stuff I'm not gonna... And here we go. Situations that mirror the films come up, and the characters try to make sure things go better than last time. You know, there's an episode where a Terminator is going after people of a certain name by the order they are in the phone book. And it's like, I mean, are we gonna split up and try to protect everyone, or focus on, you know, the one that is I'm not going to give away whether they know who it is that is the actual target, but yeah. Let's see. Like at least some of the movies, certainly the first two and Genesis, this comments on how human beings relate to technology, how much we rely on it, and if we create machines that are dangerous to us. At least one episode involves a nuclear power plant, at least one involves an AI that controls stoplights in LA. They worry it might become at least part of Skynet since it has so much access and control. Now, there are a lot of mysteries, twists, surprises along the way. I'm not sure I can think of a single one that felt genuinely unearned or just really, really stupid or the like. I love all the mysteries. Over the course of the show, Sarah and the others will meet people who help create Skynet. Some of them know what they're doing. A lot of them don't. A lot of the show is them investigating, trying to find out if this or that thing helps Skynet, and if this is the thing that helps Skynet, how to best stop it or prevent it. Again, the second movie, it's like, well, it's this one specific guy, and he works in this one specific place, and Sarah's first thought is to kill him, and once, she finds that she just can't bring herself to kill him, they decide, well, let's blow up the one place then. They're obviously not going to do that on the show. The show, there are a bunch of different, yeah. Now, the show has a lot of characters that are difficult to get a clear read on, where you learn things about them the more you see them, and they tend to do a really good job of making it make sense with what we've already been told, and yet them being great twists, unexpected. This is not like Lost, or to some extent Alias, where you'll find out the answer and then it's like, was that really what they were setting up? Because that does no, but that contradicts this and that thing. Never happens here. It's incredible. They sat down to make this show, and they were determined everything is going to go together and hold up, and it's incredibly gratifying to watch. The more of the show you watch, in my personal experience, the more you love it. And that's really impressive, because I loved it right from the opening seconds of the pilot. So I love every single episode. The entirety of both seasons are great, and the season openers and season finales are great. I forgot that I wrote that more than once. Sometimes the show spends too long on a single storyline, and chunks of a season of the show will be all action, and more to the point, it will all be the same kind of action, such as Terminators after the good guys, and both human good guys and Cameron will fight the Terminator with guns and hand-to-hand respectively. Or fairly little action, perhaps with emotional stuff instead. It's always great, but sometimes you wish there'd be a slightly better balance and or more of the other thing. But that's also a thing that I wrote in the notes a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, it's to an extent still. Now, the show has a good and appropriate amount of screen time of Terminators being Terminators, tracking down leads single-mindedly, working to better blend in and or repairing damage done to them, etc. And the Terminator characterization is almost always on point. A lot of times, the good guys will pose as someone else, get close to people of interest to get information, to get access to something they need for a mission, etc. The characters slip very smoothly into these other personas, even though clearly at times they feel very uncomfortable, and it's clearly to the audience, not necessarily clear to the other characters, but little gestures and facial expressions will, yeah. The good guys will sometimes interrogate or be interrogated. They'll get information, leads, and follow them. There's a sort of investigative thing going on, like, I guess CSI only finding Skynet instead of solving murders. I mean, they do solve murders. Occasionally, they'll find, they'll find a body and they'll try to figure out why was this person killed. What did the Terminator want to accomplish by killing this person? Were they a target, or was it just to get rid of a witness, or what exactly? But yeah, smaller team, less equipment. Basically they'll hack, they'll talk to people, piecing together what's going on with this or that Skynet thing. Maybe sometimes they'll have access to video recordings and they'll use that to figure out what the, yeah. But there's definitely, there's a lot more investigating than in the movies. In the movies, they tend to know or very quickly find out things. So now, if you watch the first two movies back to back, there is substantial tonal dissonance, and either you don't mind or you, like me, find it absolutely devastating, find it hard to enjoy the second movie if you enjoy the first. And I love the first movie. It's one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. The show balances the tones of those first two movies incredibly well. Now, let's see. Right. And next section. Sex and gender. Now, I have said this in an earlier video, but I do think it also, yes, I'm going to say it here as well for people who haven't or aren't watching the video. After the events of the first movie, Sarah Connor would not automatically be arrested since she didn't carry out any violence against any person. But after the events of the second one, she would definitely have to avoid law enforcement, or she would go to jail or back to Pescadero. There are people who survived the explosion of Cyberdyne who know that she was one of the people there. For the guard who got tied up in the bathroom and was freed by the other one clearly identified the Terminator. He knew from the the police had been, yeah, the guy who who fired shots in the mall, in a hall of the mall, right? And he would most likely also give descriptions of Sarah and John. And John's foster parents were just murdered. So people, the police would be like, well, where's the kid? And then they would hear, oh, the mother just escaped. And by the way, the mother blew up a building, and this kid who perfectly fits her son's description was present. Those two guards, there's no reason to believe that they died. They called the police, they left the building. So, yeah. Ultimately, it's not a plot hole for the second movie, but it does make it really strange that in this show, John Connor goes to high school. I realized that the fact that they left LA. They're not, they've been going around the US. Every time they move every so often so that they're not risking being found. And but still, it's like, yeah. Now, the show does have them try to avoid the authorities, and there is an FBI agent looking for Sarah. Due to the events of the second movie, he specifies that. It does help matters that he is now, 7 years older than, younger, that they would expect. So it'd be harder to recognize, but he was already attending high school before they traveled through time. Now, him being a high school student was probably done to increase the appeal of the show. A lot of shows are made for teenagers and 20-something audiences have characters who are in high school and or college. Obviously, casting an attractive woman as the female reprogrammed Terminator is also part of that. There are shower scenes. In one season 1 episode, there's 2 shower scenes in 2 minutes, which is pretty ridiculous. It almost never gets as bad as that at any other point in the show. Sex scenes, sensual scenes on the show, it could be a lot worse. The high school storylines are some of the least interesting on the show, but yeah. And a bunch of characters have love interests and do teenage-type recreational stuff, like video games, eating hot dogs. Which is, again, you know, I love hot dogs. I'm not... And video games. Hello. But I'm just saying, if you're worried that you might be hunted down by killer robots, maybe not what you would focus the most on. But to be fair, it's not like John and Sarah, but still. Don't get me wrong, it is not a full-on show for teenagers like Everwood, Popular, One Tree Hill, and the like. I was a teenager once. So the you know, 100 years ago, but yeah, it does feel a little awkward, and yeah, I guess I shouldn't say too much more about that in this video. Now, in the video I did on Terminator 3, I talked about, yeah, I mentioned that, you know, the sexualization of Cameron is not constant. You know, there are some scenes where she and John are in intimate circumstances, and in those scenes there is some sexualization. So instead of mere titillation, it is an exploration of the idea of human beings having sex with androids and or cyborgs, an idea which, excuse me, is interesting and has been explored well in other sci-fi as well. Now, I really love that they made the decision to straight up go in this completely other direction, to have a reprogrammed Terminator who is a young woman, because it is, you know, if Arnold Schwarzenegger dead-eyed stares directly at you and tells you to do something, you might do that thing out of fear. But if a cute-looking, you know, a character says she looks about 16 or 17 years old, comes up to you and smiles and asks if you could do a thing, yeah, a lot of people are gonna do that thing for her. And they're not immediately gonna tell their friends, you will not believe, I just saw this monster of a man, and he asked me to do this thing, isn't that really weird? You know, they're gonna be, like, charmed, and, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to make a Terminator like that. And, again, it's much, much better than the evil Terminator in Terminator 3, who, I'm sorry, she looks like a supermodel. I don't have any problem with Kristanna Loken. I think she's done great acting in... I don't even think she gives a particular bad performance in the movie. It's perhaps misguided, but I don't think she does a generally bad job. But she's just not right for the role. I get that, like, they maybe wanted to contrast the massive muscle for the male character with a somewhat softer looking. She, you know, once you realize, you know, yeah, as a Terminator, she's not soft, but yeah, you know, if female cyborg, I get that, but she looks like a supermodel, and it's ridiculous. But like I said, I talk about that in the video I did on the third movie, so there's no reason to restate that. Action. The action is smaller scale, but there is a lot of it, and it's not really small action, you know. I guess, like, yeah, there's perhaps more of like, for a while there is a lot of tension where, yeah, it doesn't have a lot of like cars, you know, yeah, big car chases and like trucks exploding and such. There's not a lot of that on the show comparatively, you know, yeah, the movies have a lot of that compared to how low the running time is. Compared to how much the running time of this entire show is, there's very very little of that. But they kind of, yeah, I'll detail it a little in a few, maybe a minute or so. But first I'm gonna, okay, maybe 2 minutes. I've got some other notes. I realize it's probably a budget issue, but when this show has full on, they're called T88 or T888 skeletons in the show. They're not the same as the T800. Walking around, they're not completely convincing. I wish that they would just shoot around, just film close-ups of physical props. Honestly, there are a couple of times where they only film like the head, or yeah, and for those it looks convincing. But yeah, physical props, even if they had very limited expression and mobility, meanwhile the design and level of detail of the skeletons is incredible. But part of it is that they can't, if they're not going to use a specific thing for a lot of episodes, they can't really justify just straight up, like, actually there is like, it does sometimes happen. You do sometimes see physical prop skeletons, and they look better, much better than the actual. But yeah, let's hypothetically say for one episode they have to show a Terminator arm in frame. You know, maybe they would build an arm that has a limited mobility for that episode. However, if they're not going to use that arm for more than that one episode, it maybe becomes a bit harder. Yeah, then it's like, let's just have the CG guys do it. And let's put, it's time and money you'd be spending that wouldn't necessarily pay off as much as some other things. It's something. Sometimes I see people criticize the way TV show episodes look and compare them to like huge movies, and it's like, you do realize that like production time for a single episode of a TV show is way smaller than for a movie, right? You get that, because it's like there's a huge difference between working for an entire year. I'm not saying, they're not filming nonstop for that entire year, obviously, but from it's depending on the movie, but some movies are made where they start making them, they start pre-production, and then about a year later it's ready to go into theaters, and they have months for shooting, they have months for post-production, and they only have to produce a few hours. For a TV show they have to produce 42 minutes for just, yeah, it's I'm not going to get into every single detail. You can look it up, but it's fairly ridiculous to expect. Anyway, I don't know. I don't watch current shows. I guess the newest. Let's see. I've watched some that was made in like 2014, 2015, but not since then. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe today they can build big, like the second season of the Transporter TV show that was made in 2014. But I'm not sure, that might have, I'm not certain how, if theirs was like a really big budget compared, but I've heard that, say, Game of Thrones has incredibly high production value and such. So maybe today, but it's, the show ran 2007, 8, and 9. So yeah, which is why they time traveled to 2007, and then plus that, then 2027 is 20 years ahead. So the but that might not have been. Yeah, I get no. You know, I'm not gonna get into. Anyway, basically, a Terminator skeleton should always, only ever, be shown in a way that is amazing. And this show always gets that right. I'm not gonna lie, some of the following, I thought of it today, literally. And it's something that, if I was to do another video for the first movie, this is some of what I was, actually, I might have said some of this, but I'm pretty sure I didn't say all of it. Anyway, the very first time we ever saw a Terminator skeleton was at the very end of the first movie. It happens just a few minutes after a huge fireball explosion completely covered the Terminator. After the explosion, we see the Terminator leave the cab, or whatever it's called, of the truck. He leaves opens the door, climbs out. He was sitting in the truck. He appears to be on fire from head to toe. His flesh literally burning off, and some of that we actually see in front of our eyes. Then once the audience has truly accepted that finally the Terminator's defeated, a silver chrome metal skeleton rises out of fire, and we realize then that the Terminator took no damage from the fire. He was run over by a truck just a couple of minutes ago, and he got up, only walked with a limp, but still, explosion, fire. The Terminator waited until all the flesh had burned off before getting back up. But once it was down to just a metal skeleton, he was no longer on fire. As I mentioned in the most recent video I did specifically on the first movie, from the moment it rises to the moment the red light goes out in its robot eyes, the movie is full-on horror movie, which it was only in part up to that point, along with action and thriller. It survives being on fire for maybe a minute or two. Fire may not be pleasant to be very close to, but it certainly is something humanity has experienced with as killing just about any threat to us. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere it's like one of a handful of things that actually full-on kills cockroaches. It's how we make sure the meat we eat is completely without microorganisms. But the Terminator's barely even slowed down by being on fire, much less hurt. The only negative effect it suffered is it's not going to be able to blend in anymore. The show is not always scary when there's a Terminator skeleton on screen, but it is always deeply memorable and cool. Like, if I felt so inclined, I could probably sit down and give a lot of detail about every single scene that there is a Terminator skeleton in the entire show. And, maybe that's not, I just, just before I started recording, I finished watching the season 2 finale. I've watched, I spent the last 3 weeks, I spent the last month watching every single episode, and before that, I spent, I've been watching one episode a day for the last, and I watched all the episodes twice now since a couple of months ago. So, but I'm saying half a year from now, I'll probably still be able to. So, yeah. Now, its real Terminator metal skeletons can be fully destroyed by melting them with thermite. And, in the second movie, we learn that part of the reason that Cyberdyne brings about Skynet is that there was some left of the skeleton from the first movie. They're not going to let that happen again, so they're careful to always destroy skeletons in this. Excuse me. They do amazing Terminator makeup on the show. It always looks like there really is metal under the skin. Like, I know for a fact, I've watched, I'm not stupid, they can't make robots like that yet. I know that the actors on the show are human beings, even if I hadn't watched behind the scenes stuff. By the way, if you think you're going to really get into the show, the Blu-rays of both seasons are well worth getting. but I still have to remind myself, looks real, it's not real, it's not real, when, just, yeah. When Terminators fight each other on the show, it's often that they will grab each other and slam each other into walls, throw each other away in order to damage the other's metal skeleton. They will slam or throw each other directly through walls, through the floor. They will pick up heavy but small objects and bash the other Terminator with such as steel rods. So, a lot like the movies, but they go on longer than T2 and sometimes around as long as T3. Now, let's see. Maybe not a ton of kicking like the TX does, but, that didn't make that much sense anyway, but whatever. And let's see. Let's see. I think just the pilot episode, and again, not every single episode, but just the pilot episode, and certainly once you've watched a lot of the show, combined easily. But the pilot by itself might have more Terminator on Terminator hand-to-hand fighting than Terminator 2 and Terminator 3, possibly even combined, but if combined, only just barely. But yeah, it's. Let's see. I mean, I will say, like, if you watch the first two movies and you're like, I really like to see Terminators fighting each other, though, because honestly, there's not that much of that. And part of it is, of course, that once you know, there are reasons why the T-1000 doesn't start fighting the T-800 until he does. And once he does, it's a very, it's kind of one-sided. He absolutely curb stomps the T-800. So it's really, and that is the thing. On the show, a lot of times it's a bit more even fights. It's T triple eights fighting other T triple eights, and there's a yeah. Ultimately, it boils down to the outcome. It tends to be whoever gets the if one of them is really gets in a situation where they can really do significant damage to the other, or maybe they get some kind of object to bash them with, or maybe they're able to push them off a building or something. Now, well choreographed and plentiful action. You've got hand-to-hand, human versus human, Terminator versus human, Terminator versus Terminator, guns, chases, some vehicle chases, such as motorcycles and cars, Terminator, yeah, I really should have proofread that. Anyway, and yeah, sometimes police and the like will get involved. You've got future war fights with plasma rifles and occasional hunter killers and such. Now, but yeah, in short, yes, they do a really great job of this kind of, yeah, when you sit down to watch this show, not every single episode has a lot of action. Some barely have any, but if it's an episode with action, you can expect it to be the kind of action you want to see from Terminator. Again, keeping in mind that it's not on, they have a lot less production time, and the budget has to be spaced out over a season and all this stuff. But it makes up for it by having there is a lot of just people shooting at each other and at important stuff, and like human actors getting into hand-to-hand fights with others, and frequently it's that they're both playing Terminators, and yeah, very fast paced. Both the films and the show are paced right. The first two films, obviously, are paced right for the medium. The films are also fast paced, but they're paced like films, and this is paced like a show. Ultimately, movies that hit the theater, not made for TV movies or miniseries, they're made with the philosophy that the viewer is going to stay throughout. As such, some movies don't take off from right away. Meanwhile, TV shows have to pack in enough interesting material in each segment, whatever they're called, between commercial breaks. To make sure that when the commercial break comes around, you stick with that episode, and preferably you're interested enough that you catch the next episode as well. And, this is maybe not true of the very earliest TV shows, and I don't watch current TV shows, but when this aired, it had a lot of competition on the other networks at the same time, in the same time. So I don't know when this aired compared to, say, Lost, Heroes, but action shows with a sci-fi slash fantasy twist. There's something going on that you don't see in everyday life. That's true of all three of the shows. And yeah, I mean, let's see, 2007, 8, 9. Yeah, like seasons 3, 4, and 5 of Lost. Again, I don't know about time slots, but I could see if I could only watch, okay, not me, because I love the Terminator, but if I didn't love the Terminator, if it was just another thing that I thought was really cool, yeah, I mean, there's some really strong stuff in Lost seasons 4 and 5. So, now, and let's say, Heroes, these seasons, okay, season 2 I mean, okay, I'm sorry, writer strike or no, season 2 of Heroes sucks. It is so terrible. Anyway, season 3 is competition for, and I guess also 4 are competition for this, and yeah, I mean, there's some really cool stuff in those seasons. I realize that, probably, I've heard some say that the first season is the only good season of Heroes. I think some really cool stuff happens in seasons 3 and 4, but I don't know. I guess it's not as good. They're not as good as the first season. Anyway, thus, James Cameron spends more screen time setting up action, building towards armed conflict. The show does occasionally do this kind of thing, but much, much rarer. And chases and such, and the chases and shootouts and the like go on for longer than on the show. And part of it is also simply that the show started airing in 2007, and the movies 1984 and 1991. Action movies are paced differently today and since 2007 than they were, in 84 and 91. So, yeah. Excuse me, I'm just gonna need to... Let's see, I think this will do. And the cameras. Moving, sorry about that. Now, let's see. Sorry, James Cameron. I should probably... See, I really respect that they wanted to pay tribute to James Cameron by naming one of the main characters after him. But maybe it should have been a little... Literally, now you can't talk about the franchise without specifying. If you just say Cameron, I mean, context clues can sometimes... Like, let's say that you just blanket say, I think Cameron is one of the best things about the Terminator franchise. Are you talking about the reprogrammed robot, or are you saying James Cameron and you just only said his last name? Or are you saying that the franchise was only good when James Cameron was in charge? Anyway, where James Cameron's action is very cinematic and grand in how it's filmed and edited, the show's action is more visceral with handheld camera. It'll start and stop very suddenly, and and again, it's like a lot of action shows from its time. The yeah. Now, like hypothetically, that probably, yeah, when they air movies, like if you haven't watched the first Terminator and you try to watch it and there are commercial breaks and such, yeah, I could understand if some people wouldn't, you know, yes, if I focus really hard, I guess I could kind of understand why someone might not stay through the commercial breaks, because technically a little while passes before it fully takes off. Okay, there's a lot of setup and storytelling and such in the early parts. Again, I can't look away. If someone wanted to, like, to distract me for nearly 2 hours, if you start playing the first Terminator movie, I'm probably just gonna watch that until just, yeah. Anyway, moderate bloody violence like the first two movies, and a number of genuinely incredibly messed up things. And it really, again, it really gets it. You know, I do love Genesis, and I do think that movie does a decent enough job despite being PG-13. But ultimately, this franchise really does it. Yeah, it should have violence. It's not. Yeah. Anyway, the there are some, yeah, like the show, the let's see. I guess I shouldn't give that away. But yeah, messed up things, like if you don't, like if the first two Terminator movies gave you nightmares, and you're one of those people who are like, I don't want to have nightmares from what I watch, don't watch this. Seriously, it is incredible. Yeah, it's got really nightmarish stuff in it, and it plays it completely straight. It's not like afraid to scare you. Now, at times the show feels more like Terminator 1 than Terminator 2, such as when, yeah, I'm not going to give away exactly how, but yes, Cromartie needs to, yes, some of the flesh comes off his skeleton, and he has to have, have some new to replace it so he can pass. And, just, yeah, in general, a lot of the things that Cromartie does, and a number of things about Cameron. There's this scene where the there's after they've defeated a Terminator, like I said, they have to melt the skeleton in thermite. And yeah, there's at least one scene of Cameron completely detached, gradually cutting all the flesh off a Terminator so that she can melt the skeleton in thermite. Obviously, the flesh would get in the way of the destruction of the skeleton. I mean, in the long run, they maybe, I don't know. I don't know what thermite does to just human. I mean, it's not made to destroy human flesh. It's made to make it easier to get through, really, yeah, for example, steel. But they probably have to spend less thermite if it's just the skeleton, if there's no flesh on it. So she removes the flesh with an X-Acto knife. And that's the kind of thing, like, Cameron and, like, Dexter, they can do that kind of thing. But if you or I had to stand knowing that this is not a human being. It looks like a human being, but it's not one. This is not like, at that point, it would be incredibly messed up. But just even still, even trying, I mean, the fact that there's metal under the flesh, that's not even necessarily going to make it easier for you to cut into it. Your lizard brain is screaming, "This is dangerous. Stop doing what you're doing. Get away from here." But Cameron, this sweet-looking 16, 17-year-old teenage girl, just stands there for, I don't know, hours, I guess? It must take hours. It's an entire adult skeleton. She just does that casually, like she's painting her fingernails or something. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it a female thing. I'm just saying, yeah, like if you were putting away, like, yeah, some kind of just casual, yeah, let's say just, yeah, the family just had dinner, and you're taking the plates into the kitchen, and you're doing the dishes completely casually, like it's a completely natural and not at all messed up thing to do. And yeah, a lot of things about Cameron are very much like Terminator 1, and yeah, I'll get more into her. There's a character section of this video, so yeah. In the pilot, we're told that the T-888, which, yeah, the general Terminator you'll meet on this show. And that's also something, this is really the first time, the show is pretty much the first time that we really see T-800s that don't look like Arnold. And obviously there's been some reluctance to do that in the movies, you expect, but they do a really great job on the show. They made sure they cast the right kind of people. Not all of them are like big, I mean, none of them look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but most people don't. Most people do not, in fact, look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But they're actors who can get the kind of coldness across and meticulous efficiency, and the just, yeah, they get people that are like, you are generally genuinely scared of the Terminators on the show. Like, if I one day answered the door and it was like a prank, and someone got one of the actors who played Terminator on this show to ring the doorbell, my front door, ask me for my name, and then like pick up like yeah, I would freak out. I would, again, logically knowing there's no such thing as Terminator, that would seriously scar me. So, please don't do that, I guess. But yeah, the Terminators on the show, when temporarily disabled, such as when given a substantial electrical shock, will reboot after 120 seconds, and that's an excellent element, and it's used well. Is that enough time to try to disable the Terminator permanently, such as by removing the chip, which we know from T2 is an option? Is it enough time to get a safe distance away? Or are they going to have to do something within the 120 seconds in order to survive? And yeah, it's very clever to do that. Yeah. When characters know they have to fight a robot on the show, they come prepared, such as with explosives, shotguns, and the like. Now, on this show, some Terminators are modeled on real human beings, and they're referred to as that character's twin, which, thanks for that horrifying image. Imagine answering the doorbell, and it's someone who looks exactly like you, and they're there to kill you to take your place. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's the first time we've ever seen anyone impersonate another person in the Terminator franchise. Obviously, the T-1000 in the second movie. But we're talking about T-888s. We're talking about, yeah, again, so they had skin grown to look like you. That's horrifying. And the show can be very bleak sometimes. What appears to be victory may be revealed to the audience to be a defeat, sometimes revealed to the characters as well. Sarah and John are very determined to personally spare and generally keep alive innocent people, and generally anyone who isn't an intentional threat. Really, they don't want anyone dead except for the Terminators. Unfortunately, sometimes doing so comes back to bite them. Maybe one of their enemies will force, trick, or otherwise convince the person that they spared to work against them. Now, the first Terminator movie ends on a note of hope. And honestly, I would, yeah, this is, I guess I shouldn't give away whether the show have, you know, there are definitely scenes that are hopeful. I shouldn't give away whether episodes end on hope or end with this sort of bleakness, you know, the war being unwinnable, the people gradually becoming damaged beyond repair, even if they had a victory in the episode. But tell you what, I will quote the commentary track from one of the episodes. Episodes that end with some hope also end with some hopelessness is kind of what the, yeah. Now, but yeah, you know, it is not just like, it's not 24/7 misery of just, well, you know, this is going to be horrifying from start to finish, you know, and it's not a party, but, you know, yeah, sometimes they do, like, enjoy the situation they're in, or yeah. You will see Terminators in very different situations from what we've seen before. Some of them are characterized different from what we've seen before, but it always makes sense based on how we see them and what we learn about them in the first two movies. Also, it would become tedious if we never saw them in a new situation. I really appreciate that in future war scenes, they are actually carrying plasma rifles, like in future war scenes in the first two movies, and unlike the fourth movie. And unlike the third movie, this never shows the future war without also showing human beings. I mean, it's one thing that the third movie only has CG elements in the future war sequence, but it doesn't even show any people. The whole point of the future war is that it's a fight between two groups, one of those two groups being humanity. And the humanity is barely surviving. What's the point in showing, wow, sometimes the voice time, anyway, showing that without humans? It really underlines that the third movie understands some of the visuals, but doesn't get the points of the first two movies. See, that's one thing where I really imagine James Cameron, you know, he was very frustrated and disappointed with the third movie. I can imagine when he saw that they show the future war in the movie, and then not show a single person, but only show, like, ooh, look at what we can make, like, robots and hunter-killers do today with technology. I mean, for the, is that like a subtle victory for the Terminators, that someone made a Terminator movie and didn't bother to show how humans were doing in the future war scenes in that Terminator? Just like, look at what we can do with technology. The whole point of the first two movies is you should think before you just do with technology. Anyway. In the movies, it's quite consistent that Terminator flesh takes damage in the same way, by the same means, as human flesh. But on the show, there are a number of times where Terminator flesh seems like it takes far more to take damage than human flesh. And I got it, honestly, it's probably, again, that it's just easier to just make it like, oh, well, they took a couple of nicks on the face or whatever. Then, well, I mean, that's gotta have taken all the flesh off the face, right? Because, yeah. A lot of times we'll see Terminators bending something, breaking it, or the like, that in real life is incredibly strong. Obviously, the way they did it on the show was simply to reproduce the tough object and make it out of, say, styrofoam, something that's easy to bend or break. But they use it enough that it's effective, and not so many times that it gets to be repetitive. You do genuinely feel like the actors playing Terminators are Terminators. And that brings us to characters. All the acting is incredible. Leads, supporting cast, one-offs, etc. Basically, every character gets at least one love interest, except, obviously, Cromartie and possibly one or two others. I won't give away here which ones. As you can probably imagine, they tend to cause interpersonal conflicts with other characters and audience frustration, lowering the guard of the character, risking the success of missions, and the like. Now, there are interpersonal conflicts, trust issues, disagreements on methods between all the main characters, but not so much that you don't believe that the Connors would continue to work with Cameron and Derek, who I realize I haven't explained yet, but I will in a couple of minutes. Everyone who plays a Terminator, even the ones who only do it for a very short amount of screen time, do incredible quote-unquote Terminator acting, expressing no emotion without coming across as wooden, and their movements feel efficient, no wasted effort, and they all look just right, the types and the like. And that's where I have to admit, before I saw Summer Glau play Cameron, before I ever saw Summer Glau, before I saw her on the 4400, I wouldn't have believed that she could play a Terminator. But yeah, actually, yeah, when 4400 ended, and me and my ex-fiance were like, where are we gonna get our fix of Summer Glau and Garrett Dillahunt? And then we heard about this show, and then we heard that they were both going to play Terminators, and it was like, why didn't this happen sooner? That makes so much sense. If you've seen Garrett Dillahunt in anything, some part of you thought, for real though, did they send a robot back through time and like teach him mostly what human beings move like? Because there's just, I have great respect for the man. And in interviews, he does not come off as this sort of, but I've never seen him act, and he's in those in the two shows. He's in The Road. I feel like there's at least one other movie I've seen him in. All of his screen time, he has this sort of, yeah. Now, let's see. Right. So Lena Headey plays Sarah Connor, and yeah, I guess this is from Wikipedia. Sarah Connor is a major character in the Terminator series. She's the mother of John Connor, who will one day become the leader of the human resistance. The authorities, however, see her as a deranged fugitive. Series creator Josh Friedman saw over 300 actresses for the role, described the actress he was looking for was someone who embodied the spirit and who was believable in that role, and not just some glammed up Hollywood actressy thing. So after seeing 300 actresses, they hired the 300 actress. I am really glad they decided to set the show after Terminator 2 and have Sarah still be a vital part. Her not being in Terminator 3 at all genuinely felt like an insult to fans. The franchise would not exist without her, and some might say that Terminator 2 is really more about John than it is about her. He's the one who needs to be protected and survive for the future. I see where you're coming from, but it really, the movie would lose so much if she wasn't in it. And yeah, I mean, yeah, to briefly go over Terminator 3, originally there was a role for her, and like the you know, blanking on her name, sorry, Linda Hamilton, read it, and she said, it's soulless. There's nothing, and she also said that she felt that the character's journey had been completed in T2. So I'm excited to see what convinced her to come back for T6. But anyway, apparently in Terminator 3, she dies partway through the movie. There's no time to mourn her, and then it just and it ended up with just she's barely even mentioned. And then, like, I don't know, is it the midway point? I guess it might be the midway point. John sits down and says, "Oh yeah, she died like years ago from cancer." Got that, audience? One of your favorite characters died from frickin' cancer off screen between movies. I am at peace. As long as I'm not watching T3, I am at peace. In my defense, I watched, just 1 week ago, I watched Swordfish, and that movie is terrible, and that's why I'm still a little on edge. And there's probably not going to be a 3rd season to the show. Life is not fair. Anyway, yeah, Terminator 3 made it completely clear. By that point, the people who were guiding the franchise didn't care about Sarah Connor. And, for sure she is the more interesting Connor character in T2. Now, on the show, Sarah will seamlessly go back and forth between decent homemaker and badass doomsday prophecy believer battle ready. Get the C4. I'll make pancakes. And there's this running thing there where she's not a very good cook, and she'll burn roasts and the like. And Sarah meets a lot of mothers and potential mothers that she can recognize herself in, and sees in them ways her life could have gone, how John's life could have gone, how their relationship could be. And like in the second movie, Sarah sometimes has nightmares, and let's see, and still some are about the apocalypse and the robots, some are not as clear. And let's see, yeah, well, an example is, and fairly early in the show, I don't know, I mean, I guess it's not technically a dream as such, or is it? Anyway, she wishes that she could stop the atomic bomb from being made by stopping the American scientists who made it. Now, let's see, right. Now, at the end of the first movie, we see Sarah recording tapes for John to listen to in the future, and the second movie has some narration by her. So this show has voiceover narration by her, and it's fairly similar to what we get in the second movie. She muses on their chances, philosophizes, tries to figure out what the right course of action is, balances her humanity with being able to go far enough to save the world. Some of it is ill-conceived, some of it is extremely ill-conceived, and at least once Sarah restates lines from the movies that were delivered passionately, but in the subdued way of narrating, it really doesn't work. And there is some narration by other characters, and some narration is reciting myths, stating facts, retelling historical stuff. Some of it is reading from famous literature. Obviously, all of it is intended to relate to what's happening on the show, the episode, even the scene. I'd say it works about 80% of the time. Now, let's see, I guess. Now, let's see. There is an episode of the show where Sarah, it seems like Cameron is about to kill someone that Sarah badly does not want her to kill, and she makes up an explanation and gets the both of them out of the situation in a way that doesn't arouse too much suspicion. And I absolutely love how she, yeah, Sarah thinks on her feet. You know, I almost, did I say feet? She thinks on her feet. One of her many feats of great. Is are you buying this at all? No. But yeah, she thinks on her feet. I think that's what I was trying to say. And she comes up with this entire backstory and explanation for what's going on that'll get the attention off. And I love this characterization of Sarah. It's my favorite, except maybe the first movie. And the show also has my favorite characterization of John Connor, and not my favorite characterization of Kyle, but I like this Kyle better than any of the movies other than the first one. You know, he's almost as good in this show as in the first movie. But yeah, in Terminator 2, Sarah really is crazy. She has gone insane because of the weight of the knowledge that she has. On this show, I think an argument could be made. She's simply too well adjusted for it to be credible that this is the same Sarah Connor. You know, or at least that the Sarah Connor from T2 would become like this. And honestly, I don't think I saw very many people, excuse me, put forth that point of criticism. And I do think some people made decent arguments against this show, but yeah, that's the thing. There's really no way to, you would simply have to, yeah, that is who she is. And then anyway, let's see. Yeah, in the second movie, she's smart, but she's also very unstable. And let's see. It was very clear she couldn't remain calm in any situation where she wasn't directly fighting Skynet. For example, when they go get food at the gas station, she's sitting there staring off into the distance. She's not thinking, oh, we are safe now, we're going to be okay. She's thinking the opposite. Of course, we don't spend very much time with her in that movie after they blew up Cyberdyne, so it's possible that she spent the 4 years between the end of T2 and this getting increasingly more emotionally stable, even if she isn't getting any less prepared, since every day is another day they're not getting attacked by a Terminator, so maybe they did prevent Judgment Day. You know, when this show starts, we're in the year 1999. Judgment Day was supposed to be in 97. So she spent, you know, year and a half, 2 years after Judgment Day was supposed to happen, with it not happening, with no robots turning up. You know, this idea is set up in the pilot where she's been with an EMT for 6 months and never mentioned her fears about Skynet to him when T2, despite the fact that she would never be able to get out of Pescadero as long as she did talk about it. She still couldn't stop talking about it. She, you know, she pretended to no longer believe it, but that didn't last for very long. And when she was called out on it, she immediately reverted to being unstable. You know, she even attacked Silverman when she knows logically that that will only delay the release. You know, in T2, we're told she stabbed Silverman in the knee with a pen. We see that video where she talks about the nightmare, and well, let's see, she doesn't, I guess, does she physically attack in that, or does she just get out of her chair and seem in distress, and then they pause the anyway. And then, you know, we have and then in another, wait, in the scene where we see that video, she jumps over the table and attacks Silverman. And yeah, anyway, in the original ending to T2, after Judgment Day didn't happen in 97, she was incredibly happy and could finally relax. She talked about getting drunk. We see that she has a granddaughter and is in a children's playground with her. In other words, she obviously didn't get locked up again, or at least didn't stay locked up, and John doesn't seem concerned about her interacting with his daughter, which suggests that she hasn't been unstable for a very long time. So, yeah, you know, there is that. I don't know. I haven't heard what. Yeah, what was it like? James Cameron. He tried to watch some of the show, but he admits he didn't give it much of a chance or something. I don't know. I mean, I can understand. I love this show, but if and last time I watched it, I loved Genesis. But if push comes to shove, if you ask me, should there ever be more than one? Should we see the Terminator either in movie or in series more than the first movie, the entirety of the first movie? I'm with James Cameron. There's that studio guy who said, let's just end the movie when the truck blows up. And James Cameron was like, F you, the movie isn't over yet. Yeah, the entirety of the first movie, I would say, is the only thing we should see. However, if there's gonna be more, I want to focus on, yeah, let's when there's some that's bad, like T3, and if I recall, T4, let's talk about that it's bad and why it's bad. And when there's something good, let's underline that and say, this is really, really good. They put a ton of effort into the show, and almost all of it paid off. It's absolutely incredible. And but I can completely understand why James Cameron feels that the first two movies, that's the complete story. There's I have to admit, I kind of hope that someone at least gives him the gist of some of the best episodes. But I mean, if he doesn't want to watch it, I would never say that someone should have to watch something. Yeah. Anyway, Thomas Dekker as John Connor, and let's see. I guess, yeah, I'm just briefly going to say, John struggles some with his feelings for Cameron, the cyborg, not the director. I struggle with my feelings for Cameron, both cyborg and director. Let's see. Right. Yeah. Dekker was cast after Heidi secured the role of Sarah Connor. Regarding the Terminator films, Dekker says, they're like my favorite films when I was younger, so it's very ironic that I'm getting to do this. No, irony is not coincidence. And I know for the younger generation and for myself, John was equally important to me as Sarah was, and I know a lot of people that I hear from really, really care about John. And yeah, Dekker describes his character as a continuation of Eddie Furlong's character, but he's in a darker, more mature place now. And yeah, I've already mentioned this is my favorite characterization of him. Yeah, let's see. Despite knowing that the future needs him alive, he can sometimes behave in a reckless manner. Let's see. He insists he gets to be a teenager, gets to be a regular person. He wants maybe a friend, maybe a girlfriend. He takes risks that he shouldn't, considering his responsibilities. It's going to be fairly frustrating to watch at times. Of course, really, every John Connor can be frustrating to watch at times, with the possible exception of the Terminator Genesis version, unless perhaps you dislike his role in that movie or the like, of course. And John will try to become emancipated from his mother. Now, Summer Glau as Cameron. Let's see. Yeah, Cameron is a Terminator whom John Connor sent back from 2027 to protect his earlier self. Her model and exact capabilities are not known, but she can mimic human mannerisms better than the T-800 could, and she can also consume small amounts of food, first for Terminators. I mean, to be fair, technically we haven't seen we haven't seen them try to and then not be able to, but yeah. In at least one of the original treatments for the script for the first movie, James Cameron actually did write that it would consume like a little like I forget if he specifies. I feel like I read that it was Twinkie, but maybe that's yeah. Anyway, yeah, small amounts of food to because the flesh needed nutrients, but he again we don't see it, but we can't know for absolute certain that it's anyway. She and the other actors who portrayed Terminators on the show do incredible acting. I feel like that's the third time I've said that. The thing is, each time I forgot about the other times, and each time I added something that I do want to make sure to say. Here's this one. It genuinely feels like they are just imitating human behavior. Like it's not something that at all comes naturally to them. And I really, like, if I hadn't seen her in interviews, I wouldn't necessarily think she's a Terminator, but I would probably think that there's something about her that is very unusual, because she didn't play a Terminator on the 4400, spoiler alert, I guess, but she was still that was still some very unusual behavior and acting. Yeah, but like you see her in interviews and she's smiling and casually talking and just like, yeah, I really hope that she is still like I looked up, is it Arrow that she was on, or she was on some current show of like a, again, I don't watch current TV shows. If I watch every single movie that comes out based on comic books, nearly every single one, but I don't want to get into that here. Can you imagine if I also felt determined to watch every single show that, like, yeah, that's not. I've enjoyed some of that. I remember enjoying watching Smallville, and there's some chance that I'll watch that again at some point. Maybe if I watch it again at some point, I'll almost definitely do videos on it. But yeah, but she is absolutely incredible at, like, just, yeah, and in like, what's it called, Serenity. I always get, like, Serenity was the show and Firefly was the movie, right? But yeah, in that she also plays a character who has, like, clearly, these roles also use the fact that she used to be a ballet dancer, so she can get her body to do things that look, it fits for, if she's playing a Terminator and her body can do certain things that, like, the Terminator body might be built to do things that are very useful for it to be able to do that a human body couldn't possibly do. And yeah, I mean, I've seen like a clip of her like spinning around. She's got like a sword in each hand, and I've read somewhere that she has some kind of mental something or other, but I don't really know. Like she's like a really quiet, distant type maybe or something. But anyway, yeah, she must really love playing those roles. I'm not sure I've heard her in this. She says that she found some of the ideas really interesting, and yeah, but yeah, she must really like playing roles like this, you know, because she's incredible at it. Now, yeah, her name is an homage to Terminator film franchise creator James Cameron. See, I don't. Does James Cameron maybe have a middle name, or maybe they could have used like his mother's maiden name or something? But the fact, like, characters on this show, like, it's possible that someone's done a supercut. I didn't think to check YouTube, but people say the word Cameron on this show a lot. You know, they refer to her. They say her name to get her attention. They talk about her when she isn't there. When yeah, it's kind of surreal to watch, and you have to kind of remind yourself they're not breaking the fourth wall, and then, like, talking about the creator of the film. Anyway, Glau had not seen the Terminator films prior to being cast as Cameron, whose role was initially kept concealed but was later revealed to be a Terminator sent from the future. John Friedman had previously once cast Glau in a pilot he wrote 4 years prior to the Sarah Connor. the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but she was already committed to Serenity. Glau almost did not audition for the role because of her preconceptions of the character, and she felt that she did not have that Terminator look. And that's, I mean, I guess I can kind of see it, but just, I feel like there are definitely actors who couldn't pull it off. I just don't think that any of them were ever cast as Terminators in this show. And yeah, once, once she was cast, the fact, just like, she really, when she isn't trying to, like, smile or convince someone that she's human, she does, like, it doesn't feel like there's no life in there, but it feels like that life is laser focused, and it's like, just, yeah, they say that the eyes are the windows to the soul, literally, on this show, they say that at least once, and her eyes, it really does feel like there is a machine in there. She does incredible at that. Now, on playing Cameron, Glau said that she was intimidated by the role because it was a challenge for her to balance the human and robot characteristics. And, yeah, just briefly, yeah, in a commentary, Thomas Dekker explains the reason Cameron was blending in better in the pilot was that then her mission was to get close to John. Since then, her mission has been to protect John. And they also talk about on the commentary track, Cameron does turn it on and off, sometimes on the show. And let's see. Yeah, it really is a, excuse me, yeah, when you first see her, she's like smiling, and yeah, but then once it has been revealed that she's a reprogrammed Terminator, then she has the thing where it feels like, yeah, and yeah, she does incredible. The most complex Terminator? I saw one review saying that in Terminator Genesis, Arnold was completely non-threatening. In this show, no matter how many self-ironic jokes, and there are a lot, and I love them, no matter how many genuinely sweet things we see Cameron do, you never completely forget that she is a Terminator. She was made to kill people. She's capable of doing incredibly messed up things and not even flinching at it. And honestly, no Terminator on the show is ever completely non-threatening. I mean, I guess once it's been reduced to... Once the skeleton has been melted and the flesh has been disposed of, I guess that Terminator is no longer frightening, but leading up to that, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, in Terminator 2, Arnold is not scary to the viewer. I'll maybe grant cool, but I will not grant scary. And yeah, this fixes that. Or it doesn't fix it, but it does better. It never makes that mistake. I would definitely say it was a mistake. When John Connor says, "Cool, my own Terminator," that's when just like if I didn't already feel like the movie just isn't respecting the amazing original, then that would be like, dude, just call it something else and pretend that it's like, cool, my own Terminizer. And then it would be like, oh, hey, that Terminizer movie sure is a lot like the Terminator movie, but obviously they're not in continuity with each other. It's a movie where a teenage boy gets to order around a killing machine. I can't... Anyway, in the first Terminator, the Terminator is the scariest monster ever. In the second Terminator movie, he is a pet. It's not quite as bad as in RoboCop 3 with the ED-209, but it's not necessarily that far off. And in this, you do not forget, the Terminator could never be a pet. Now, I have seen some people question why Skynet would make a Terminator that looks like a cute teenage girl. Think about it. Any resistance fighter who comes across a cute teenage girl is going to want to protect and or pair up romantically with her, depending on their age, gender, and sexual preference. And again, while attractive, she doesn't really have a supermodel look to her. She is very attractive and does use her being attractive, but she doesn't look like a Hollywood leading lady. She can blend in a high school setting and the like. And yeah, character says she looks 16 or 17 years old. I forget where, but someone says she has like a tiny, dainty porcelain-like face. I think it's on a commentary. Sorry, special feature. Now, but yeah, very early in the show, the idea is introduced that sometimes a reprogrammed Terminator will simply snap. Nobody knows why. So should they trust Cameron? Her original programming was to fight the resistance, to kill the senior members, officers. But if they can trust her, she greatly increases their chances of mission success. Ultimately, before I get into that, see, that's the thing. And that is a point I will, like Rod Hilton, I will grant Terminator 3, it's actually a little interesting when Arnold gets turned back into a, but it lasts for so, it's over almost before it starts, you know. But on this show, yeah, it's a killer robot. You can't trust a killer robot, which ultimately, I mean, in the second movie, you can understand why Sarah wants to destroy the chip. But I mean, yeah, name one thing in the entirety of the second movie that makes you think that they can't trust the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator. One thing. Even one. Even before he's told not to kill, he's not killing anyway. I mean, I'm not saying that he necessarily should be in that scene at the start of the second, yeah, when he gets the clothes and I'm not saying he has to kill. I'm not saying that just because he kills someone in the same scene in the first movie that he has to in the same scene in the second movie. I'm just saying he's not. This is supposed to be a killer robot. Even if he actually, yeah, I was about to say even if he was already told to, you shouldn't kill, then why does he ask John why not to kill? No, he clearly hasn't been told not to kill, and yet he isn't killing. It's such a anyway. Ultimately, you could say that every main character and a number of major characters could snap at any moment. They're all under extreme stress. Maybe they'll very suddenly do something shocking, perhaps, maybe dangerous, maybe to others, maybe to themselves, something that could endanger the fight for the future. But again, if they can trust each other and themselves, and they fight, maybe they can prevent the apocalypse. Ultimately, it's close enough to be worth the risk. Because it is like, yeah, it might, but this is this is someone who could really help win that fight. Now, some of the resistance fighters may do extreme things in the present because they know what will happen in the future. Understandably, the Connors have issues with this. And part of the reason these people might snap is, of course, the fact that they know about the future war and the Terminators, which would drive everyone at least a little crazy, and did in the first two movies as well. Cameron knows John from the future, and in the future she spends a lot of time with him, and rather than having her sit down and explain everything about future John, every so often something will come up, and there may be things about future John that are uncomfortable in the present. Other characters who come to the present from the future may also know certain things. Some of these things can cause friction between the people from the future and those from the present. Now, Derek and Cameron can provide John with insight. I swear, I'm going to explain who Derek is very shortly. I think, okay, next one is James Ellis, and I think it might be the one after that that's Derek. Derek and Cameron can provide John with insight into how things are in the future. Derek doesn't know future John that much, but he has seen the war up front, fought the war. Sarah only knows things about the future war by having been told by people from the future, and can she be certain that the future she's been told about is still the one they're facing, given that they've now moved Judgment Day? And John's fate, what he's fighting to achieve, is to help win this future war. So for some of this, he might listen to the people who have first-hand knowledge. Again, Derek and Cameron, over his mother, despite the trust issues that Sarah has towards Derek and Cameron. This creates very compelling friction and drama. Richard T. Jones as James Ellison. James Ellison is an FBI special agent pursuing John Connor, at first puzzled by what he initially thinks is Sarah's outlandish story. He later... I should have rewritten that. Over the course of the show, he changes his kind of... He sees things, and no longer... Yeah. He can be very sarcastic. Jones describes his character as a man of faith and likens him to that of Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. And on a commentary track, they talk about that they didn't just want him to be Javert, the Les Miserables cop. Miserable? Yeah, sorry, because it's French, right? Les Miserables. I have to make sure not to just say Les Mis, because not everybody knows that is short for Les Mis. Or yeah, that's what, I've heard Lindsay Ellis refer to it as Les Mis a million times, and for people who know, I just want to make absolutely clear, I'm a huge fan of hers. This is not disparaging her. It's just, I picked up also calling it Les Mis, and I got to be careful with that, because not everybody knows that that's what that's referring to. But yeah, and if you don't know what Les Miserables is, then the word Javert is not going to mean anything to you. I barely know Les Mis. I have watched like 1 or 2 adaptations of it. I don't think the adaptations I watched were very good. So it's not really that I don't like Les Miserables. It's that I haven't really watched a good adaptation that would make me love Les Miserables, And I definitely haven't watched it. Have I watched it on stage? I don't know. Honestly, as a kid, my parents took me to a million stage shows. It's possible that I watched it back then and just forgot. I don't remember very many of them. Anyway, I think they do a great job making sure he isn't just the Javert of the show. The show explores what it would do to a Christian to deal with this kind of prophecy, because, yeah, after all, Sarah is talking about the end of the world, which is something that Christianity deals with. Jones was allowed to improvise a few lines to provide a little bit of comic relief to the show. And, let's see... Yeah, I guess... I think that's all I'm gonna say about... Yeah. Yep, Derek is, in fact, the next one. So, just briefly closing about... I almost called him Javert, Ellison. And yes, that is a reference to Harlan Ellison. The character could very easily be frustrating, since we don't want him to win. He's fighting the savior of humanity. He doesn't realize that that's what he's doing, but it is what he's doing. But he doesn't get frustrating, at least not for that. I realize some people feel he doesn't have enough to do for a lot of the show. And here we go. Brian Austin Green as Derek Reese. Derek Reese is a resistance fighter sent to the past by the future John Connor. He's the older brother of Kyle Reese, John Connor's father, and paternal uncle of John. He knows Cameron in the future, but still does not trust. He's the older brother of the father, and he's the paternal uncle. Talk about, to quote a character on the show, that's a real measure twice, cut once kind of Carpenter. Yeah, okay. Sometimes Wikipedia pages read like they're just almost kind of worried that someone's going to come and say, I know the page is like a couple of thousand words, but there was at least one factual thing that you didn't state. So that's a demerit for you, and they're just, they lie sleepless at night just wondering if there was at least a single fact that they didn't fit into the page. He knows Cameron in the future, but does not trust her. some of the reason he doesn't trust her is because of what he knows from the future. That's not a spoiler. It's revealed fairly early on. And yeah, sometimes he's paranoid around her, but, other times they have kind of a love-hate relationship. And I guess, yeah. I like the decision to have a member of the Reese family, but not have it be Kyle as a regular on the show. If it were Kyle, for one thing, there's no way that they could live up to his portrayal in the first movie. They also couldn't possibly keep a show as intense as the first movie, and if it's not going to be that intense, why have it be Kyle? But with a member of the Reese family, the audience immediately feels a connection to him, by which I mean that we automatically care more because of the family relation, but since we don't know him for sure, they can have hints that he might be willing to do extreme things that Sarah is not okay with. Now, let's see. I mean, I'll grant that, excuse me, that for it to be Kyle Reese, who was a regular, they would have to find some way of, like, I mean, if someone travels in time, let's say that someone, after Kyle Reese didn't come, after Kyle Reese was sent into the past, is it possible to travel back to, like, yeah, let's hypothetically say that traveling, wait, yeah, since he did die in the movie, and he already was transported through time, it's not like they can, if they transport him through time from another, like, hypothetically, let's say that they somehow manage to travel through time and pick up Sarah's mother after the start of the first Terminator film, but before her death, that ultimately wouldn't change much. But if Kyle Reese doesn't travel back in time, he doesn't father John. So, but they could have found some way around that, And they point out on a commentary track that Derek rarely blinks, which is kind of part of the intensity. Derek does not always get along with the Connors. Derek and Cameron both know each other from the future, and there are things that they know about each other that they may not be telling the Connors. Derek and Cameron both know future John, where Sarah knows present-day John, and this causes conflict because there is significant difference. It's 20 years. Person changes a lot. And this John hasn't seen the future war. He hasn't seen bombs drop. He hasn't seen, this endless fight against machines. So it's a very different person. You will see Kyle Reese on the show. Maybe not much, but yeah. And they found someone who looks a lot like him, and his performance is also very true to the first movie. And let's see. There is one thing about his appearance that has always annoyed me, and I think I finally completely figured out why. While the facial hair he has is accurate to what the character has in the first movie, it doesn't quite look the same, and I think this is mostly because of how that first movie is lit, or is it lighted? Whatever. And how this show is lit or lighted. Simply, the lighting makes it look different, and I kind of wish that they had realized this before they started filming and found, like, some way to place less emphasis on his facial hair, because it is a little distracting that it looks so different. And it really, when you just, if you just look completely, yeah, it's the same facial hair, but it looks so different, and it's because the way stuff is lit that is filmed has changed a lot in all those years, But yeah, I guess 23 years, yeah. So, but yeah, I kind of do. Honestly, I would be fine if he was, like, clean shaven. But the fact is, you can always tell that little bit, when in the first movie, it's barely visible. I don't think it's the color of the hair, because I think they nailed that as well. It's just the lighting. Anyway. So, yes, Levin Rambin, if that's how you pronounce it. Again, huge respect. She is an incredible actress as Riley Dawson. And I guess, yeah, I'm just going to say she goes to John's school and they spend some time together, much to the consternation of Sarah. And, oh, by the way, I'm not going to read aloud everything on the Wikipedia page, but if you haven't watched the show yet, don't read the Wikipedia page, because it it straight up says, you know, oh, by the way, in the finale, this is exactly what happens with this character, and it just, yeah. I kind of feel like Wikipedia should have like a mode where you can say, I have never watched the show, or I've only watched up to season 1, episode 7, or something, but as it is, just, you can't, I didn't read any of it before I had already watched all the show, so I wasn't spoiled, but same for IMDb fact, but I guess that one is basically, that's where they put the especially spoilery stuff, other than, like, trivia in the spoiler section, so anyway. And she can be kind of awkward and weird, but she pulls it off without being, like, upsetting or something, and it's like, you can, there's an explanation. I'm not gonna give away what the explanation is, but you understand why she is the way she is, and there's a, yeah, you know, you can understand why John would be attracted to her and her to him. You know, John himself also isn't the most natural and comfortable, yeah. And Garrett Dillahunt as Cromarty. Cromarty is a T-888 sent back in time to kill John Connor in the pilot episode. And yeah, I guess I'm just not gonna give that part away. Yeah. Let's see. By far one of the most compelling of the, yeah, Terminators in general. I was gonna say evil Terminators, but really Terminators in general. And yeah, being very robotic and detached is among Garrett Dillahunt's specialties. And like Arnold T2, Cromarty sometimes can't quite smile in a natural or comfortable way. And I don't want to be saying negative things about T2 throughout this video, because I made an entire video saying negative things about T2. But just briefly, in this, when he can't quite smile in a natural or comfortable way, you feel like it's like, you know, the other person might not go along with what he wants because the smile is awkward. And if he doesn't, you know, there is some chance that Cromarty's gonna just, you know, reach out his hand, grab him by the throat, and snap his neck. So when that smile comes up, it's like, you can't smile. It's more like, oh, please accept it, you know. And it is sometimes amusing, but we are always, whenever, yeah, with Cromarty, there's always this, like, he's there to kill, and he's really freaking good at it. And there's like, it's not like at some point he's gonna be like, oh my god, I've killed over 100 people, I can't believe this, I'll never kill again. No, he's gonna keep going until they stop him. And this is also, like, I think when you watch the first episodes, you could maybe start to worry that the show will just be, that it'll just be one scene after another of Terminators doing Terminator stuff. There's, yeah, I guess did I already say that they don't overdo it. The show has 31 episodes, and you never get tired of seeing Terminators do Terminator stuff. It never becomes tedious. Some of the show's Terminators have gotten pretty good at convincing people that they're human, but Cromarty, much like the Terminator from the first movie, has trouble with it. But yeah, I kind of already said this, but yeah, between Dillahunt and Glau, and possibly others, I don't remember for sure, This was kind of the show that took over the actors from the 4400. Or maybe I'm thinking of another show, but whatever. Shirley Manson as Catherine Weaver. She is the CEO of a high-tech corporation called Zero Corp. And let's see. Yeah, and yeah, at first at first the audience doesn't quite know. I'm not gonna say what it ends up with, but you don't quite know what exactly is she trying to accomplish, like whose side is she on, kind of thing. Yeah, she's one of the most interesting characters on the show. And, right. Other characters. Actually, I guess, am I going to get into these? Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to get into any more specific characters. A bunch of characters from the first two movies appear on the show. Pretty much the only character that doesn't look like the original actor from the movies is Dr. Silverman. The characterization of them tends to fit quite well. Some fans were, and some fans watching today will, definitely be upset with some of the characterizations. I don't necessarily have a problem with the depiction of Silverman. The character, yeah, when you see the character, he is in a very different place than the movies. But Bruce Davison plays him, talented though he is, it looks nothing like Earl Bowen. And the show uses the Terminator's strengths and abilities and qualities very frequently and very well. A ton of character growth. There are a lot of episodes that have one-off plots that sometimes means one or more of the following: unique setting, unique set of supporting characters, perhaps even one or more one-off protagonists. And these are without exception incredibly well cast, well written, and well acted. I also don't tend to find them frustrating and left wanting more time spent with them, as happens on a lot of other shows. And the good guys will have to make difficult, sometimes life or death decisions that affect the future of other characters, sometimes permanently. And they will, of course, also have to live with these choices. Basically, all the acting is excellent. That includes the child actors. The show makes great use of flashbacks to the future of war. The future of war. Again, I don't proofread these. For example, an entire episode will every so often have another relevant flashback. Sometimes they will forget to age of a character via makeup. They will look essentially the same in the year 2007, 2027. And yes, I am referring to scenes where it's clear that it's not just like 2011 or something, no. So, soon after Judgment Day. People don't necessarily age much in, 4 years, but no, I'm referring to scenes where Kyle Reese is an adult even though he was a child in 2011. Scenes close to when they start using time machines, which is also 2027. Now, I forgot to read if I'm gonna, I'm gonna guess that there's gonna be something in this section, so Wikipedia. This is where I put everything that I didn't copy in somewhere else. Or rather, this is where I left everything that I didn't. I read the Wikipedia very carefully before watching the show, but haven't reread it very recently. Right. Yeah, the music for the show. I absolutely love the music for the show. They did incredible work on it. It always fits the mood, which already fits the first two movies. Every episode opens and closes with, you know, variations on the main theme from the first two movies. I love that decision, and I will grant the theme from the first movie is impossibly 80s. There is no way to use that unironically in the, you know, in the year 2007, for example, or 2019, which is, I I respect the decision to not use the Terminator theme for the T6 trailer, but I don't approve of it. I just use an updated version, like on this, you know, for this show. I don't know, they didn't make like the full, what is it, 3 minutes and 42 seconds, I want to say, you know, theme from the first movie. They didn't make a full version of that for this show because they don't need that much, but they made the, yeah, the opening credits, the closing credits, yeah, both have the, you know, very, very memorable parts of the, and they do an amazing job of updating it. I mean, at the end of the day, the basic sort of, like, you don't have to change that much for it to be a good update, you know. And they also, they use some tracks from Xylophonic Bone Collective, their third album, Bone in the USA specifically. Absolutely perfect. Now, yeah, let's see, we're on page 27 of 68, and there's still, well, yeah, I guess from here on out, it's critic stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna read aloud at least a bunch of the musical section. Yeah, the show features incidental music composed by Bear McCreary for financial reasons. The main theme of the Terminator film series, originally composed by Brad Fiedel, is featured only briefly in the TV series, mainly during the title sequence. McCreary stated that his score is inspired by the tone of Fiedel's score in the first Terminator films. And since the show is a direct sequel to Terminator 2, he felt that the tone of the music should be consistent with that of the film as much as possible. He does amazing. I really just incredible. He began working on the score by recording metallic sounds using oil cans, whale drums, chains, animals, brake drums, garbage cans, thunder sheets, tin cans. After which he edited the samples and created his own custom library of metallic drums. Every episode after, live metal percussion elements were recorded on top of the electronics. Final scores were performed using a synthesizer. McCreary chose to use an ensemble of electric string instruments instead, which is also, I mean, if the first movie had come out in 2007 instead of 1984, then this is exactly how the music should have been done for it, but obviously it's not. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, this is still really good stuff. Musical theme was created for each of the principal characters. The theme for Sarah Connor is the most frequently used theme, in addition to being the longest and the most developed theme in the series. There are two main sections to Sarah's theme, one presenting her badass stoic warrior side, and the other as a loving mother. John's theme was originally composed for a specific scene in the pilot episode, performed with solo clarinet to convey his loneliness and awkwardness. McCreary stated that the musical ambiguity in the melody is used to show John's, transformation in the series. Although themes were also written for other characters such as Derek Reese, James Ellison, and the Evil Terminators, no themes were written for Cameron during the first season because McCreary felt that her character was defined by her relationship with John, Sarah, and the others around her, so Sarah's or John's theme was used in most of her scenes. And that is, I think that's a quite, it also keeps her kind of mysterious, because that is, yeah, she is who they need her to be, almost. You know, when she's alone with John, yeah, she, you know, he is attracted to her. And when she's alone with Sarah, she tries to convince Sarah that, you know, John having feelings for Cameron isn't a problem, and that, you know, she's professional and they're gonna get the job done, and it's okay. You know, this kinds of, And then occasionally, when there's this kind of dark note to her, they might play part of the theme from, I guess, is it? I guess it is a specific to this show, but it just, yeah, again, it sounds like it could have been in the first two movies. But anyway, there, yeah, the music that they use to designate evil Terminators is sometimes used for Cameron when she does or says or appears to be thinking of something very dark. And let's see. Yeah, the series mainly features McCreary's original score. Songs and instrumental music from other sources are used sparingly. And let's see. They do use, I'm not going to give away which, but when they do use music, you know, well, original music or whatever it's called, you know, songs that have already been done and been used elsewhere, they do an incredible job. Like, it's unreal how well they use, yeah. And let's see. And they may use cover versions. Yeah. They make music that shouldn't sound scary or sad or bleak sound scary, sad, or bleak. It's incredible. And let's see. Okay, yeah, I'm just briefly gonna. So yeah, one of the yeah, under marketing on the Wikipedia page, one of the things that they did to advertise this is before it started running on TV at all. They used a brief teaser which ran during primetime programs, consisting of an image of two red dots that lasted for a few seconds on screen before disappearing. And the two red dots were revealed to be the eyes of the Terminators from the show in the second phase of the advertising campaign, which began 2 weeks later. So for 2 weeks, people saw these red dots and they were like, what just happened? What was, did I even see that? Do I need to call a doctor? Am I starting to see things? That is so perfect. That is the perfect way to advertise. Yeah. So, you know, I think I think an argument could be made that ultimately the show was abandoned by Fox. But I'm not gonna lie, that's how you advertise this kind of thing. That really is. Yeah. You know, that's almost like a you know, that's something you see and then you start to dream about it and you can't quite play, and that's you know, I mean, other than just outright having Terminator, which is what they had 2 weeks later, you know. Yeah, it's that's so good. Now, let's see. Right, and yeah, billboard advertisements, which were described by Variety to have blanketed New York and LA, contain images of Summer Glau's Terminator in a Lady Godiva-esque pose, used to target the young male demographic, while the key art emphasized on Sarah Connor being the core of the show to attract the mom demo. And yeah, I haven't seen I don't know that I've seen those, so I don't know, but some of the poster, you know, yeah, some of the artwork, yeah, it's of Cameron, and you know, yeah, Lady Godiva-esque, you could say, but it's really only like the top, like the top half of her torso, and then under that there's wires and like robot parts sticking out. So it has that thing of like, well, the lady part's pretty, but yeah, the rest of it, oh wow, that's not human. That's not even remotely human. You know, that kind of thing, which is also something. I'm not an expert on manga or anime, but it is an image you see in some of, I want to say Ghost in the Shell is one of the ones that had this where part of the image is, you know, an attractive young woman, and then part of it is this, you know, technology like thing, you know, where it's, you can't, if you look at the entire thing, you can't be entirely like, it's not just entirely sexually alluring, but it's also not entirely just like professional looking and just technology, and so yeah. The what's it called? Oni, the video game has, I mean, I guess she's not really, yeah, she's not like attractive. She's more like a little sister kind of, but there is, a, you know, yeah, a robot that looks like, I don't know, 10-year-old girl maybe, and some of the time you see robot parts sticking out of her, and so yeah. And let's see. And hmm. Yeah, if you're considering buying the Blu-rays for yourself or someone else, the Wikipedia page under DVD and Blu-ray. Actually, let me just make sure there's no spoiler, but it definitely, yeah, it explains what the, you know, it describes some of what's on there. I mean, you know, if you're buying it on a website, that might also say, but you know, before you begin looking, if you want to know. Let's see. Yeah, that does not really spoil anything. Yeah. So that's, wait, let's see. Yeah, and, you know, once it was canceled, yeah, fans have led numerous campaigns to revive the show ever since. Josh Friedman dismissed crowdfunding in March 2013 due to issues involving holder rights, according to IGN. A movie was also considered, as Thomas Dekker and producer James Middleton confirmed in interviews. And CinemaBlend, chose the show as one of the 12 shows Fox should be embarrassed about canceling in October 2015. I don't know how you managed to narrow it down to 12. I feel like there's, I don't know, 100 shows they canceled that they shouldn't have. Let's see. And I guess that pretty much. Yeah, I will make this the, yeah, the last part of the Wikipedia section of this video. Critical reception. On review aggregated, Rotten Tomatoes, Season 1 has a score of 71% based on 24 reviews. Season 2, 80%, 10 reviews. MetaCritic, the first season, has an average score of 74 out of 100. Again, 24. Second, 67 based on 4 reviews. Now, let's see. Yeah, I guess. Now, yeah, so this one critic said of the pilot, this installment feels less like a pilot and more like an excuse to rearrange the deck chairs on the Terminator franchise to potentially have a TV show. I I definitely do understand where he's coming from, because it really is, yeah. And I mean, like I said, I don't like the third movie, but yeah, some people were frustrated that it ignores the third movie, which, I mean, I'm gonna get more into that. But anyway, yeah, it does. It does ignore the events of the third movie. Even if you want to say, well, some of the stuff that happens in the show happens before the third movie couldn't have happened the way it did. Like, literally, the third movie is set in like 2003 or 4, something like that. The show has John Connor jump from 99 to 2007. There is no John Connor in the show in the years between 1999 and 2007. And there's no mention of Claire Danes' character. So, yeah, if you really care about the third movie and it would frustrate you, yeah, maybe don't watch the show. It's the show never at all. Just, yeah, it ignores the third movie, and in part maybe because they wanted Sarah Connor. But anyway, I believe I've written more about that later on. But anyway, yeah, I will say, saying that, oh, this is now 1999, and then we time travel to 2007. This is the first time in the franchise that we've seen time travel from the present. So it is, and I mean, they explain it. They built the time machine in the future, and the stuff that they use to build the time machine is, that stuff that, they have, maybe not the exact same thing, but someone said it's like jury rig. You can jury rig, in the present. And so, yeah, so therefore we have, I will grant, in the 2003 movie, one second, if John was born 85, so he'd be like 18 or 19 years old. I guess, yeah, I could believe that the version you see in the movie is around 18 or 19 years old. Sure, I'll grant that. And yeah, they didn't want the show. They wanted the show to be about teenage John Connor, plain and simple. They didn't want him to be 18 yet. They wanted him to go to high school. They wanted for Cameron to be a high school aged, also, looking at least. So yeah, it's that the yeah, I get being frustrated with that, and I mean, if you don't get into the episode and you're just sitting there like mentally deconstructing, you can almost see like how they're like, we want teenage John Connor, but we want it to be set in present day. We don't want to do, what's it called, period piece kind of thing. I mean, yeah, they would have to leave it set in the year 1999, if not. And yeah, they people would constantly be like, oh right, I mean, I guess they don't have that back then. Yeah, I can understand. I can understand why it might seem cynical. I don't think that that's the yeah, you know I think there's enough. I mean, that's also the thing. He's talking about the pilot. I will grant that if you only watch the pilot, if you have to write a review based on the pilot, you don't know if they're going to be able follow up on the promise of the, he is talking specifically about the pilot. And yeah, if you only watch the pilot, that is a thing. Like, if you have the chance to watch only the pilot, yeah, it's not necessarily gonna sway you either way completely. I would say that give it a few more episodes. If by the end of the first season, if when you've watched the season finale of the first season, if you don't care to see what else happens on the show, then I don't know that anything the second season is gonna. I mean, no, I mean, I get. Okay, if you watch part of the show, if you make it to the end of the episode called Allison from Palmdale, and after watching that you still don't want to watch more of the show, yeah, I don't think that if that doesn't grab you, and if nothing by then has grabbed you, then I don't know that the show is going to be, is going to deliver something that is going to be amazing to you. Yeah, and there's one negative review says it's like a cheap. It feels too much like a cheap remake of T2. I mean, that's the thing. It has to set up plot. It has to have a lot of action. Excuse me. And excuse me. The got character moments. I can see what he means, but I really don't think they meant to make it as a. But yeah, the pilot. That's the thing. It's an action show, and a lot of action shows have an incredibly action-packed pilot. But it's not that I could totally understand. If you watch the pilot, you might think, oh wow, they really are gonna make it's really gonna be non-stop chasing and Terminators fighting Terminators, and for that, yeah, it absolutely. But they couldn't have made one of the more low-key episodes as a pilot. Now, let's see. And yeah, okay, just briefly. This guy, he watched the first two episodes, and he said Fox has taken the wholly predictable course of putting a lot of money into explosions and regenerating cyborgs, not having paid much attention to plot, casting, or writing. Even the first two episodes, do you really don't think that the casting or the writing, I'll grant that, like, plot, I mean, they're setting up the concept for the show. They're explaining what's, part of it is that it has to be exciting, and part of it is that by the end of the pilot, you're supposed to have some sense of what is the show going to be. That's pilots are really freaking difficult, and this show has one of the best I've ever seen. It's also one of the only good ones I've ever seen, but it's also one of the only amazing ones I've ever seen. It really does an incredible job, and yeah, I can understand plot, but casting and writing, you honestly don't think that Sarah, John, and Cameron are cast or written well? I just don't understand that. Again, the only thing I can say is maybe you think that they're too different, that the Connors are too different from the movie counterparts. And yeah, I can understand that. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, in his review of the second season, yeah, she turned out to be intelligent, complex, and consistently operated on a deeper emotional level than anyone could have expected. And other reviewers disappointed by Sarah and John and the sluggish pieces. However, he felt these weaknesses were outweighed by the strength the performances of Summer Glau, Ryan Austin Green, Garrett Dillahunt, and the writer's commitment to showing the emotional toll on the characters. And yeah, and it called Terrific Finale, which took the show in a new potential-filled direction. And creator Josh Friedman confirmed to Click Clack that he has vowed to never reveal how the series would have progressed or ended. And I will say, I mean, for one thing, it must be incredibly frustrating, but also just the like, I can imagine he might feel that it would take away the, what's it called, like the yeah, take away the magic of actually getting to watch it, to just describe it, to just write, even if you wrote something long, you know, I mean, given the whole rights issue, they probably wouldn't get to do a proper like novel of like what would have happened, so it would just be describing, you know, this is and this and that. And yeah, I understand. I understand people's frustration with that decision, but I totally understand why he doesn't want to just, yeah. I really hope that they get to make, yeah. Let's see. I don't know if, I mean, James Cameron, currently he's hoping that Terminator 6 will be popular enough that there will be a 7 and 8 that, as far as I understand, he's writing story for all three of them, but not the final script, but the story. And yeah, I mean, James Cameron, he's a movie guy. He's not really a TV show guy. He did that one show. I guess it's possible that soured him on it. Dark Angel, I want to say. I might watch it at some point because it's James Cameron, but I don't know, because it's Jessica Alba. You know, usually I agree with a lot of decisions made by James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez, but casting Jessica Alba, ultimately, you know what? Again, I think she's trying. In the second Sin City movie, she is trying to give good performance, and it might be one of those things where she just maybe hasn't. Maybe she has a difficult time putting herself in a dark enough place that the material requires. You know, I do. I don't think she doesn't care. She seems to care. In both Sin City movies, she seems to care about if it's a good performance. I just don't know. Anyway, but maybe James Cameron got something good out of, yeah, I don't know. Now, let's see. That. Okay, so yeah, now we're entirely into the critics stuff. I guess, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new section called Critics Prose. And I am gonna try to find something that I think is worth getting into detail about. Yeah, let's see. Here we have something. This one guy says, after waiting so long and spending so much money to bring back Sarah, the least the producers could have done was to give us someone resembling the Sarah we remember. And that is the thing. It really is the, if you And that's the thing. I mean, the second movie really completely made it impossible to tell a story like the one that this, because that's just, yeah. I don't think the at the end of the day, in the show, she, you know, somewhat fits into society. She's not like, yeah, she's going between places and, you know, tracking down stuff, and yeah, she'll have to pose as someone else, and she'll manage to do so. And that's just not the Sarah Connor we saw in the second movie. And I don't necessarily think that, like, if it had been set between the first and second movie, but then, when, yeah, this is not set between anything. It's set after the second movie and ignoring the third. It's not set between the second and third movie, because then something, one way or another, they'd have to end up where the movie went. So, but yeah, I could understand if you were very married to the characterization of Sarah in the in the second movie, then I don't think that the show, either you're going to say, you know what, this is just a different version, plain and simple, or you're going to be really, really frustrated and unsatisfied. And yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that you can really, if it had gotten Kyle Reese completely wrong, I would probably not have been able to, you know, to enjoy it very much. But he's the character I most care about, and they, part of, again, he's not in that much of the show, so part of it is that he's, they don't have much of a chance to get it wrong. But yeah, I don't mind that this is not the same Sarah as in Terminator 2, and I don't necessarily think that Sarah couldn't have become like this if we go entirely by the way she is in the first one. Now, let's see. Yeah, so this one guy says, of the Season 2 opener, show returns with a solidly enjoyable, action-oriented outing. Yeah. And yeah, I guess that was, yeah, so that brings us to the last section, called Critics Users. And these are from MetaCritic. I was going to say and Rotten Tomatoes, but I think they're only from MetaCritic. There are just too many on Rotten Tomatoes. Maybe I should just do like the first page of the Rotten Tomatoes user ones. I'll consider that for next time. I'll write that down right now so I don't forget concerning that. There we go. Now, let's see. Yeah, so these first ones are going to be about the first season. Now, okay, so let's see. It's guys. Melodramatic and drawn out. I can see what he means for sure. I guess that was, yeah, I went into some of that. I don't really see, again, I mean, this is based on the very earliest episodes. This is entirely based on season. No, I don't think. I do think that by the end of the first season, I think the show had moved away from that. So yeah. And then, okay, here we have another one I noted too. This guy gave a 7 out of 10. So let's see. Yeah, it focuses less on action, more on the emotional side of the whole ordeal. And the action scenes don't follow too much on James Cameron's massive flaming explosions, but focus more on Terminator versus Terminator melee fighting and on the guns. And yeah, and he also points out, you know, the CG endoskeletons aren't completely convincing, and showing lasers at HKs. And yeah, he praises Garrett Dillahunt, Summer Glau, and Aaron Cash in the pilot episode. He says some others don't do a good job as Terminators. I don't agree. But yeah, you know, if you want to read all the reviews on MetaCritic, you know, some of them make for really great. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. What the show does, this guy gave an 8 out of 10. What the show does is provide an interesting look into the Terminator timeline. These glimpses conceptually are stimulating, executionally lose a bit of shine, but played nicely nonetheless for the most part. And excuse me, my cell phone. There we go. And right, here's another review that I noted to see. Let's see. Gave it an 8 out of 10, and nah, there's not really anything. Let's see. And excuse me. Yeah, this guy gave it a 9 out of 10. He says it works. There's a lot of room for character growth, which is why they've started an immature John Connor and a robot with a learning curve. All action all the time series would Paul quickly, but this has great potential. And then there's someone who clearly put a review for something completely different into this. Yeah. Talking about Gabriel Byrne and patience, something. Yeah. Now, let's see. This guy gave a 3 out of 10. And yeah, he points out that, you know, Summer Glau, the camera only sustains a few superficial scratches, and they're not even carried over consistently from scene to scene. I do think that is a little weird. Yeah. And And he says Sarah doesn't feel like a tough woman, which just, yeah. Everywhere except like the gag reels and such, Lena Headey feels incredibly tough. Everything I've seen her in. And oh, right. This is the, yeah. Okay, so yeah, this guy gave an 8 out of 10. And he says, my only complaint is the issue that the plot of this series somewhat ignores the plot outline from the third Terminator movie. That's intentional. Not only does the third movie kill off Sarah Connor, but it does so in between movies, off-screen. She's barely even referenced. Not only should it be legally required to retcon it out of existence, it's pretty obvious that part of the reason they do so here is that Sarah Connor is supposed to be one of the main characters. They named the show after her. Maybe that's why they named it afterwards, to tell people they were ignoring movie 3. If this show happened between T2 and T3, nothing in it could be worth mentioning in T3 since it wasn't mentioned in that movie. I mean, this show, Terminator Genesis, and Terminator Dark Fate are all ignoring Terminator 3. The only movie that doesn't ignore Terminator 3 is Terminator 4. It's the, yeah. Since Terminator 3, there's been 3 movies and 1 TV show. The TV show and 2 of the 3 movies ignore T3. I also really don't, you can't possibly think that it's just going to go of course it's going to be ignored in sequels. It leaves almost no room for more story to be told. The only room for story to be told, excuse me, without ignoring Terminator 3 or retconning, changing the ending of Terminator 3, the only stories that can be told are all in the future. You can call it courageous to have it end with Judgment Day, but you can't then turn around and be surprised when they ignore it for other sequels. Now let's see. This guy gave it a 10 out of 10. This series is perhaps my favorite installment in the Terminator franchise. It explores morality and philosophy in many episodes. It also explores characters much more than the movies ever could. Terribly unfortunate that it got cancelled. Fox moved it to the Friday night death slot, and ratings never recovered. And let's see. Yeah, let me just real quick. Yeah, this was a there's some comments from the comment section of the abridged script for the first movie, and yeah, this guy says not to be a jerk or anything, but Chronicles was better than 3 out of 4 Terminator films. But he does say that the one that was better was Terminator 2, so that's obviously incorrect. And yeah, and then this other guy says, you are a jerk because as the story, Terminator 1 is still the best one by a large margin. All the rest is just, I forget if that term is, yeah, dancing around an originally interesting idea with nothing relevant to say. Terminator was about an event that was already inevitable, a glimpse into a dark future. Yet all movies, except Terminator Salvation, which was terrible, spent their entire running time on another version of let's try and change the future by killing this or that person, never leading to anything interesting. Terminator Chronicles was the height of that ridiculousness, as it was an entire show based on never getting anywhere, with emo Connor being protected by two girls tougher than him. Great story. And yeah, I do love the show, but I mean, I see where he's coming from for sure, and I do partially agree. And normally I wouldn't mind the whole thing of, you know, girls tougher than the guy bit as a feminist, but I mean, he is the leader of the future. He does need to be tough, so it is a decent point that he's not the toughest. Yeah. Now let's see. Yeah, this one guy gave it a 3 out of 10. Said the love story just seemed very lame in my opinion, and I don't. Yeah, I don't really. I'm not a big fan of the love story stuff on the show. Now, let's see. Let's see. This guy gave it a 9 out of 10. My favorite thing of the show is how every week one learns about the backgrounds of the supporting characters. Yeah, I think this does an incredible job on the, yeah, backgrounds and character development. Yeah, you really have the like the they do an incredible job. All these ideas that, yeah, the characters, and yeah. Now this guy gave it a 10 out of 10, and yeah, and he says the the time travel, the show explains enough for you to understand, leaving out enough info for you to wonder. And let's see, this guy gave me a 9 out of 10. Yeah, it says, you know, Tony Graffia and other writers have brought such a high level of innovation and powerful drama. Best stories on the show often have a little action. So far exceeds the film franchise, and look forward to a third season more than I ever will any future Terminator films that try to fulfill the same blockbuster formula. Let's see. Some episodes say nothing and do nothing to advance plot. To counter these inane entries, many have been heart-wrenching, morally, ethically, and thematically complex, cinematically inventive works deserving of acclaim and interest. And okay, so yeah, that is the very end, and let's see. Yeah, I am going to call it a day. So I hope you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed watching and recording. I'll catch you next time.